Welcome back to today's video. Today we'll be talking about mostly international news. We'll be talking about Kazakhstan, the protests going on over there, updates about Ukraine in relation to the border with Russia, and we'll be talking about the news coming out of Iran against the former administration. All right, so with that, we'll just go ahead and get started then.
Oh, the Iranian thing, right?
Yeah, we'll start with the Iranian thing.
All right, so I don't know if you guys saw, but basically, the president of Iran gave some speech, and he's basically calling for Trump and Pompeo to be tried for war crimes in an Iranian court. And he said something about if they didn't get tried, there'd be like Islamic retribution because they killed the General Soleimani.
Yeah, what I find interesting is that the Biden administration is just saying absolutely nothing about it. Like it took them like at least a week for the Secretary of State to mention like, oh yeah, that might have happened, but that's not important.
I think the really interesting thing about it is I don't think anything's going to happen with it because like
Oh yeah, no.
Biden and the Democrats do stuff like this all the time too. So it's like,
Yeah, because
Well,
if we're firing on our own men.
Yeah,
I was gonna
so
say like if they extradited Trump, then that would just like give precedent to extradite like Obama and
Bush.
even Biden later. Like that would be it.
That'd be
Oh, yeah.
hilarious, though.
That would be hilarious.
Signal Rule 20: extradite your political enemies.
I think that it was more not just the list they published is kind of like a hit list. That tends to be what the Iranians do. That they publish a list of people they want to go back to Iran to face trial for crimes, which almost always ends in the death penalty. Surprise, but then radical sympathizers here in the U.S. and abroad, they take that as like a hit list. So there's a lot of people in the former administration that are still requiring Secret Service protection, even though they're not even the governor anymore. They've been out of it for over a year by this point.
Iran is ridiculous in the fact that they're like, oh, we want to try him for war crimes for attacking a military general,
Right.
but nobody pay attention that we blew up a civilian airliner right after as retribution. Don't pay attention to it, guys.
Retribution thing is kind of funny because they're like, oh, if he doesn't get tried in the court, then there will be like mass retribution, and we'll take the law in our own hands.
Yeah,
but I do think I think they're right about Trump killing Soleimani because like you can't just like order an airstrike on people's military and political figures or even the citizens at all because like. If a country just did that to us, like, oh, we're just going to go and, like, order an airstrike on General Milley and say, oh, he was involved with terrorist actions, like, we would take that as an act of war and we would retaliate.
Yeah.
And then when we do the exact same thing, we don't take accountability for it. So I would say they're right in that aspect, but they're kind of delusional when they're talking about he needs to be tried in their own courts and the whole Islamic retribution stuff.
I think we are all agreeing that Iran, for the most part, is pretty delusional.
Yeah, pretty much. The airstrike to kill Soleimani, well, yeah, it's obviously an aggression, but I think the U.S. classifies the organization that he's working with as a terrorist organization. So technically, under the U.S. laws, there's some kind of loophole, I'm sure, that he could pull out of his ass to save him in a courtroom sort of thing.
Well,
if it really were to get to the level of like an international court, like maybe, but it's never going to get to that point. The U.S. would never allow that.
I was going to say, I think the main thing used was was it the defense authorization or no? It was,
yeah.
Not the specific act, but it allows the president to take unilateral action if American soil is attacked.
It's some authorization for the use of military force that was passed like 20 years ago that presidents should cite whenever they want to do something.
Yeah, because it's pretty vague. I think Soleimani, he was coordinating militia group operations, and those militia groups were attacking U.S. soldiers and bases. So that kind of gave us the go-ahead because they were facilitating attacks against us with funding.
Right. So that was the justification. So
honestly, I don't buy it.
I mean, I don't know. I really
think in a situation like that, when where you're like in your military presence is in a country where you're not welcome, we would treat it the same way. Like imagine if like Canada set up military bases in our country and said, "Oh, we need to stop right-wing terrorist groups." And,
Or
we
the
wouldn't
UN.
believe them there. Like, they just say, "Oh, we're here to stop." I don't know, the Proud Boys. Name some group and call them a terrorist group, and they set up military operations. Like, we would
Right.
treat them the exact same way. They're a hostile force. They're in our country. We don't want them here.
Right. No, yeah, I definitely think there's both sides definitely have arguments to it, but I don't know. It's just way too murky of the water right now to really know.
I think honestly, the solution to all of this is just simple. Just like withdraw. Don't go to places where you're not welcome, and
Well,
suddenly
I
you
mean,
won't have
Biden
people
did
mad at
that,
you.
so we got that checked off the list.
Oh yeah, well, Biden did it in a horrible way, and now people. Honestly, I think if Trump or whatever Republican wins in 2024, they can just use it as an excuse to go back. The fact that he withdrew in such a terrible way.
Yeah,
We
I
got the
mean,
whole
I
year
don't
on
know.
laughing stock.
Yeah, I think it might be just too late to go back in at this point and just take the L and let Biden keep that loss. I wouldn't tarnish my reputation if I were president to go back into a war that pretty much failed. Like, there's no way to
Guys,
spin
don't
it. Like,
worry. It'll work this time. The fifth re-invasion of Afghanistan. It'll work this time, guys. Don't worry.
yeah. So I think at this point the U.S. Should just leave Afghanistan to its own devices. And as Biden's doing, you could just send aid to the Taliban.
L.
Genius.
I hear the Russians are moving back onto the Ukrainian border.
A bit, yeah, they're moving. They're moving echelons of military
They're what?
west. Echelons. They're moving like divisions and tanks, soldiers west from their fronts near China, Siberia, those areas. I think some of them are going to Kazakhstan, but I assume a lot are going to reinforce the Ukrainian border because they had just moved away a couple. I think either divisions or platoons to Kazakhstan to detain the protesters.
Yeah.
So recently, actually, so the president gave authorization to open fire on demonstrators without warning.
Live
And what
ammunition,
happened?
yeah.
And what happened was they didn't have a lot of troops, so they activated their UN division, sort of. So the group they gave their military that they gave to the UN, they activated it, but they kept the equipment. So you had soldiers in UN gear going around detaining protesters, but they weren't like deployed by the UN, so they got in a bit of trouble with that.
Nice.
So right now, I think the protesters, they're going to be gone pretty soon because it's Russian security force. It's illegal to be in a group larger than 3 people.
Yeah.
There's like an 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's like a curfew. If you're outside of that, illegal. Russian forces are like given the go-ahead to just shoot without warning. I think there's like video of this Russian journalist media group taking a video of this detention. I guess they got too close, so the security forces started opening fire on them as well.
Oh, wow.
Russia's about to have their own Tiananmen Square.
Yeah.
This is also with, I believe, Lukashenko made a speech during Christmas. This Christmas speech, Orthodox Christmas, not, so January. Speaking of like a unification into like the year of unification is, this year between Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Russia. And he talks about like forming into a union again.
Well, that's a very original idea. I wonder where he stole that idea from.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gorbachev's still alive. They can make him the first premier again.
Yeah.
Just to pretend the last 30 years didn't happen.
Yeah. I think it's more, honestly, Putin's more of a czar than a premier because he keeps very good ties with the Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
He's good buddies with a lot of oligarchs. It's more of like a czar kind of figure than a premier type of figure.
Yeah. I know the protesters, they weren't really able to keep their momentum once Russia came in. They really lost all their momentum.
Oh, they were done.
So I think, the protests they're pretty much done. Though it did send a very strong message, not just to the Kazakhstan government, but to Russia itself, because the former Soviet Republic. Yeah, because Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan, all those countries, they're very big and they're very sparsely populated. So they're countries like that. They don't really see revolutions often. They happen, but it's very rare. Like it takes a lot to mobilize so many people.
Yeah, I mean,
And
this
live
is similar.
so far away.
Yeah, this is similar to what happened in Belarus, and
Yeah.
like Lukashenko used to be kind of critical of Putin, more neutral. Like the Kazakhstan government, they tried to like keep good relations with the U.S. because good for business.
Right.
And I think now they're going to be very Russia because same Belarus. Right after that, Lukashenko has never been critical of Putin ever again.
Right.
Ever since like Russia helped him with his protest. And he basically supports Putin in every way. So I think Kazakhstan's basically just going to be like a Russian puppet state now, similar to Belarus.
Yeah, I think one thing that the Kazakhstan has to be careful is that the people were protesting. The people were protesting a lot of things, gas prices and all that. They were also protesting a stagnant political system, political climate. Like they don't want more of the same, and being close to Russia and following that whole process was part of following the same. So they have to follow a very thin line.
I think one of the protesters' demands, at least some of them, was like leaving all alliances with Russia.
Yeah, so
they did not like Russia.
Right, they really don't. So I think the new president in Kazakhstan, he has to be careful as to not go too far into Russia's sphere, but also staying close enough that Russia keeps.
I think what he's
support.
Probably going to do is just use these protests and then have Russian security forces just eliminate the opposition.
Honestly, yeah, it sounds like it might be the most safe. It might be the safest way for both countries to operate at this point.
Yeah. So, Dush, what do you think?
Yeah, you've been real quiet this whole time. Okay, you think nothing, I guess.
I don't really know much about Ukraine. I haven't.
Well, it's a good thing we're not talking about Ukraine.
But you weren't?
Wait,
what? You're on Kazakhstan.
Oh, Kazakhstan.
Dang. Are you really? Wow.
Man, phased out.
Sheesh.
That whole thing going on over there is insane. Like that fact that like a government could just collapse like that. It's crazy to think that stuff like that still happens. It's like something you read out of a history book.
Right.
And the fact that they're talking about bringing back the USSR, I could see it happening. Like socialism, communism, that's just been on the rise again.
I don't know. He said just a union. I don't know about the USSR because they're not really. I think none of the parties are no. Putin is not a communist.
But no one on the rise in Russia though, especially like even for people like Stalin, who you think is like a dictator that nobody would like have approval for. Like he's been on the rise in approval lately.
Man, dead, and he's
a lot of the other USSR countries, like a lot of people. There's been polls about this stuff. A lot of people have been saying that their lives were better under communism than under like capitalism. So I think honestly, there is a possibility that it could go back to being maybe not in the same ways before. Maybe it's more democratized this time. But I could see like a USSR revival.
I mean, if it were to go down that path, it might be more of a USSR mixture of the Russian Empire type of thing. Where it's
they're pretty religious.
Going back to like that Stalinist time, like I don't see it unless they have a propaganda machine that rivals Nazi Germany and China. Like the people are not going to stand for it. They're not going to stand for the whole Gulag stuff. Like as much as they say their lives improved under his policies, once the policies are actually implemented, that opinion is going to change very quickly.
Yeah, I think if it happened this time, it would be more democratic. But I could see it happening, like maybe
like a union,
like more free and fair elections that wouldn't just get overridden this time.
Yeah, I mean it's possible.
Although one thing that is interesting that I just learned, I think it was on Wikipedia where I read this. The election that dissolved the USSR, there was actually the majority of people actually voted to keep it maintained, but they just ignored the results of the election and dissolved it anyway. So it seems like there's actually popular support for it.
Wow, classic USSR support. Just ignore the election.
Yeah, it's an L.
They couldn't help it. It's in their DNA.
If they
Ignore
had-
election
if they were
results no
going out,
matter
they had to
what.
go out of regular elections as usual.
Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, if it happens, it would be a very big step for, at least for Russia, because they would get all their all the Soviet territories back, which is a
Except for the
big,
Baltics.
yeah, except for the Baltics. But I mean, other than the Balkans, they'd be getting a lot of the territory that they're missing. If they get Belarus and Kazakhstan, they would just need Ukraine, some of the few stands left out there, and then some of the Caucasus countries like Georgia.
Pretty good. I mean, Ukraine, good take because they're the largest exporter in uranium.
You guys think we'd see a new Cold War or something like that happen?
I think we're already in the midst of a new Cold
we're
War.
already in
Well,
one.
with the USSR, not with China.
Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
Or do you think
Three-man
we'd all just team
standoff.
up against China?
That would be entertaining, but unlikely.
Yeah,
I don't know. The Russian relations with China historically have just been very weird because one moment they're like, "Oh yeah, you guys are great," and then like Khrushchev is like, "Mao is a bourgeois. He is from the upper class," and then Mao was like, "Well, then you betrayed your lower class," and they were just roasting each other internationally.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing about all these leftist groups. Like they all turn to each other and call them enemies of the revolution.
Yeah.
Like, Comrade General Secretary Mao is an enemy of the People's Revolution.
Yeah. No, I don't know. If that were to happen, the way I see it, Russia and the U.S. the U.S. and this hypothetical revitalized Russian Empire, USSR quasi-state, they really wouldn't have interests that conflict with each other other than because of their allies. Like, the only reason the U.S. is hostile against Russia is because of the EU. And then, other than that, like their interests don't really overlap. So if we were to take, allies out of the equation, assuming this union were to happen a few decades from now, the direction Europe is going in, there might not even be as close to the U.S. as they are now.
Oh yeah,
so I could honestly see them working together more often than not. Maybe even, I wouldn't say an alliance against China, but definitely working on the same side of the same team against China.
Maybe, I don't know. They'd probably be a better ally than the EU.
Sort of like how the U.S. and India interact. Like they're not in an alliance, but they work together to contain China.
Yeah. India, best ally. I'm saying that now, is my opinion. They are our best ally. I'm not even joking.
Superpower before the end of the decade.
My favorite thing was when Greg Abbott lit up the governor's mansion in India's flag that one day on Indian Independence Day. Did you see that in Texas?
I didn't see that.
Absolute best move. India is our greatest ally. Name a better ally than India.
You can't.
Maybe Japan.
Oh yeah, true. Why are all our good allies in Asia? I feel like all our European allies, no offense, but they kind of suck.
This is what I've been trying to tell you, Bandit. This is what I've been telling you. Asia supremacy. I've been on to this. I've been on to this for like years now. People have not been listening to me.
I was. It seems like because Europe is, I don't even know. They don't really do a lot. I mean, they do, but I feel like they always they complain.
Europe doesn't do a lot.
Yeah, they don't
really
complain.
Really, the only thing Europe does is like internal development.
Because they don't. I hate it because they always like make fun of the U.S. for no internal development, but we're spending so much money with our military protecting them.
Right.
It's ridiculous. India pulls their weight. That's why they're a good ally.
Yeah.
In Japan too.
Place like they run the largest democracy on the planet. Like I think their last election, I think they had like how many? It was like 700 something million voters, or maybe not that many.
Oh yeah, they had a lot.
Hundreds of millions of voters. It's crazy.
Imagine counting the vote for that. Yeah, I remember there was speaking like international in India. I think what is it? The BJP. Yeah, is the lead party over there. They're obviously pretty interesting. They like us for the most part.
912 million eligible voters in 2019, and 67% turnout. That's crazy.
Their elections are crazy. I remember one of their politicians was like caught. So they were running and they were caught with a plan to blow up a mosque. And when it was released, their approval rating went up and they won the election with an even bigger margin. So like their elections are really weird over. You got some crazy Like,
The
like they're
BJP absolutely destroying the elections. They have 303 seats, and the next.
oh
biggest
yeah, I know
party
it's
has
that or the like
52.
national. I think National Congress is the other one, right?
Yeah, INC.
And they got their ass kicked because they were like, I think they had like a bunch of scandals of being really corrupt. So the BJP just came in and just kicked their ass.
Well, you know what's funny? Did you know the leader of the BJP was banned from the United States?
Really?
Yeah, he was apparently a part of some terrorist group or something. Some group that the U.S. said was a terrorist group, and then when he became prime minister, they had to lift the ban because of diplomatic regulations.
Modi?
Yeah, Modi.
Oh, it might have
And
been.
you can look it up on the list of banned citizens from the United States on Wikipedia. He's listed there.
Wow. It might have been.
But
I forget what it's called, but there's some political party over in India that's like kind of a terrorist group.
Yeah,
They're
that's,
like a
that's why
Hindu
that's what the reason was.
nationalist.
It said that he was a part of some terrorist group, and then
There was, like-
once he became prime minister, the ban was lifted.
Yeah, there's like another party in India that's like a super nationalist group because they're a nationalist group, but for like a sub-national group within
So-
India.
maybe we should get back on topic.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember
India'd
India
be
being on the list.
interesting. India'd be interesting.
It would be very interesting. But what do you think Biden's going to do about all these things, if anything?
Nothing.
He will send Putin a strongly worded letter.
You think he's
Yeah.
going to do all that?
Maybe.
He
I
might-
don't
he
know.
might
They're
just-
like, we
he
will.
might just
I don't know.
dissolve
He's
it.
weird. They're like, we will do strong economic sanctions, but like, we
That
just
has to
lifted a
work.
bunch of sanctions on them, anyways.
Not only that, but the sanctions don't really work.
I think Russia doesn't really care because once they take Kazakhstan and Ukraine, I mean, what is like oil
pretty much
production,
self-sufficient at that point.
uranium production.
Yeah, I don't think sanctions are really effective because, like, you, especially when it's on stuff like medicine, you're really just hurting the populace more than you are the government.
Well, that's
Right.
the plan. That's the point of sanctions.
Well, yeah, but like, it doesn't actually affect anything because clearly the government doesn't care.
Well, it's a destabilizing economic warfare thing, but it needs to be like to actually do
hardly
it
ever works.
efficiently.
It's like
Yeah,
honestly,
well, I think it's because
Look-
nobody ever
like,
uses
look
it
at
that.
Cuba, for example. We've had sanctions on them for like the past 50 years, and it just made them more hostile to us.
With
Yeah.
the people were rallying around the government even more.
Yeah,
Yeah, so if
because like
anything,
you're hurting them.
if anything, it backfires.
Yeah,
True.
Yeah, I don't think Biden's going to do much. Because, well, for the
Wait, Sasha, I
Kazakhstan
don't
thing,
know.
to be
Biden's
fair, he
policy
really
is kind of
can't do
weird.
much. He really
Oh,
can't do anything.
Kazakhstan? Oh, no, that wasn't even weird.
Yeah, he can't even, like, the U.S. has,
That's too far away. I don't think
Amazon
we
has
could
a
do
bigger
much.
presence in Kazakhstan than the U.S. does. Like,
I mean, granted, Amazon has a presence everywhere.
oh, yeah, exactly. That's the point. But that's just so deep into Central Asia, into Russia's sphere of influence. Like,
Yeah, we can't really do anything.
you can't really do anything. And
I
then,
remember there was something where Russia was like, let us have our sphere of influence. And I think we released like a statement. It was like, the time of spheres of influence are long over. It's not the Cold War anymore.
yeah. Okay. Was this Biden administration?
I think, yeah, it just happened.
Yeah,
like, they were
figures.
like, guys, stop asking for spheres of influence.
Yeah. For the Iranian thing, well, we pretty much already know what they're gonna do. They're just ignoring it, which, in all honesty, is not the worst
Well, if
idea.
Iran can do much, they don't really
Yeah,
have
it's not like
much.
they can do anything, like unless they plan to kill another general and just really agitate them up once again. But
I don't even know what would Iran be able to do because they don't have the capabilities to strike us really overseas because they don't have
Yeah.
a large navy. They have like
Yeah.
torpedo boats that are good. That would be good for like close shore, but
yeah,
I don't really know if they have many capabilities. Meanwhile, we could just continuously like harass them with bombers, so they can't really do much.
okay,
I feel like because like even if I think that's why they don't really do anything ever because they can't.
hmm
Relatively because we're like really one of the few nations that even has the capability to sail across both oceans with a large military force.
yeah,
I mean, they have drones though, so I guess they might strike our allies like Saudi Arabia
they already
with
have.
the drone storm. Yeah, with drone swarms.
I don't really have
But
anything
apart from that,
You have
we
anything
could
else to add?
cover. Oh, not much has been happening in Iran. I know there was something to do with their elections, and they like eliminated one of the candidates.
Mhm.
And everyone's like, "This isn't democratic," and they didn't care. They're like,
Yes.
"Okay." I mean, is there anything else you want to quickly cover for the end? This was a rather short one.
Honestly, I don't really have anything else, but
Yeah, that was like 20 minutes.
yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I don't know. We had another topic. We could just do India now.
I mean, I feel like we already did that.
True. See, I mean, there's oil policy. I wanted to speak about that because Biden's oil policy, very weird. It has to do with Russia a bit, like cuts all of our oil pipelines, right? But then it's like, I am lifting sanctions on Russian oil to allow them to export to Europe. It's like, what, like, did you, like, does this, like, what is the point of this?
I need to get sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh God, please no, please no. I will object to
Use
that.
my code in the description.
I guess that's really all. Remember, guys, subscribe, like, and subscribe.